Dear learner on the platform of MOOCs, I am Professor Nafis Ahmed Ansari from Department of Political Science of Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh. Today's lecture we are going to talk about the legal framework to check the corruption in India. We know that the corruption is something which is a very damaging aspect which is related with the personal administration, and historically we find it is there in the right from the ancient period of time that we find in Kautilya, the Shastras also. So it is very necessary that every country who is aspirant of having a rapid development, they must have a legal framework to check the corruption. Now the question is that what is corruption? Being dishonest in a place of power is what corruption is. It starts with the tendency to use public power to get something for you. Additionally, it's shame that many people have made public power to get something in the form of a cheating habit. Corruption has become so common that the people now see it as normal. No corruption means that the ethics have failed. One person or a group can commit corruption. Corruption includes bribes, favoritism, nepotism, embezzlement, selling your influence, using your choice of public positions to make money for yourself, being biased, not showing up for the work, abusing public property, leaking or information, and much more that comes under the category of corruption. Corruption mostly happens because of bad administration, which means the institutions does not work right and people don't know how to run society with social, judicial, political and economic checks and balances. It is harder to follow through on laws and rules that require accountability and openness when these officials and informal system don't work. Why is there so much corruption in India? It is something which is debatable everywhere and in the national and international forum. Not being open and honest can be one of the basic point that is to be taken as a cause for the corruption. Corruption is easy to do when government processes, decisions, and public administrations are not clear to the public. People in power may be likelier to do wrong things when they know the public won't look closely at their actions and choices. Weak institutions and legal system that don't work is another area that is a part related to corruption. Many of India's institutions that enforce the country's law and rules are either weak or have been hacked. Law enforcement, the courts, and oversight groups are all part of this. Institutions that aren't strong enough may not be able to hold corrupt people responsible and may even make corruption easier. A sense of impunity from crooked people not only getting punished enough can lead to more corruption. When people think they can get away with doing bad things, they are likely to do them. Law, pay, and rewards, that is the payment or the salaries which is associated with the employer, is something important areas for the corruptions. Sometimes public servants, especially those in low level jobs, are paid very little. This can make them more open to the bribery and other forms of cheating since they may see it as a way to make extra money. Another is the red tape from the government. Long, complicated bureaucratic procedures and too many rules can make people and companies do dishonest things to speed up processes to get around problems. Because India's economy is so complicated and requires a lot of different licenses, permits, and approval, cheating can happen in these areas. In this situation, business may use bribery to get what they want. There is interference by politicians also. When politicians get involved in management issues, it can hurt the independence of government institutions. Political leaders may pressure officials to do dishonest things for personal or party gain. Another area is the cultural factors. In some situations, people may see dishonest behavior is normal, which helps to keep it going. The belief that everyone does it can make people do bad things without feeling bad about it. Other area is lack of protection for whistleblowers. People may not report corrupt if they lack appropriate protections for whistleblowers. Fear of punishment can stop people from blowing with the whistleblowers on wrongdoing, which helps corruption grow. Then there is a social inequality. Differences in class and economy can lead to corruptions since powerful and wealthy people can use their connections to get special treatment and do bad things without getting caught. Another question that is there in the system of corruption is what are some of the reasons why corruption is so common in the civil services? Politicization of the civil services is one of the area. Corruption in much more likely to happen when civil service jobs are given as a gift or in exchange of money, usually political backings. Lower pay is also a very important area that is to be taken into consideration. Putting the pay of government workers below those in the private sector, it's possible for some workers to make bribes to make up for the differences in pay. Administrative delays, people are forced to get grease the palms of crooked officials and authorities to get their files cleared faster because delay in the clearance of the files. Colonial legacies of unchecked power is there. When people worship power, it easy for public leaders to break the rules of rights and wrongs. Weak law enforcement. Many laws has been made to fight corruptions, but they haven't been enforced well enough, which has made it harder to stop. And the very important is there what are the legal regulatory frameworks for fighting corruption in India. When we talk about the legal framework, the Public Office Officer Corruption Act 1989 sets penalties for both public workers who commit corruptions and people who help them to do it. In 2018, amendments made it illegal for anyone to give or take bribe from a public worker. The Prevention of Money Moving Act of 2002 aimed to stop people from moving money and the using the proceeds of crime in India. Corporate governance and preventing corruptions and fraud in the corporate industries under the Companies Act of 2013. The word fraud has a broad meaning and it is a crime under the Company Act. People can use the Indian Penal Code of 1860 to learn about the bribery, fraud, illegal breach of trust, and cheating, among other things. The Act of 1988 forbids Benami transactions. The Act says that the person who bought the land in someone else's name can't not claim it as his own. The Lokpal and Lok Ayukta Act of 2013 calls for creating a Lokpal and Lok Ayukta in the states. In this role, they act as ombudsman and look into corruption, claim against the public officials, and other related issues. Central Commission for Vigilance. It is a job to keep an eye on the monitoring administration, give the executive advice, and help with corruption issues. The Criminal Law Amendment Act of 1952, as the penalty under Section 165 of IPC was 3 years up from 2 years. Changes made in 1961 that we can highlight. The IPC added more details to being a public servant. There were changes to the meaning of the criminal misconducts. It is now illegally for a public servant to have assets that are too big for their known sources of income. What does ethics have to do with the stopping corruptions? Establishing moral boundaries, ethical standards have up determine right and wrong. Ethics sets clear limit concerning corruption between what is morally right and what is corrupt or immoral. Promoting accountability is another very important area to have an corruption curtailed. People must be ethical and responsible for their choices and actions. People who follow morals are more likely to be honest and take responsibility for their actions. This makes them less likely to do bad things that hurt other people. Promoting transparency. One of the most important social principles is the transparency. Corruption becomes harder to grow when actions and choices are open to public scrutiny. Ethical organizations and people are more likely to do open and honest. Building trust. Trust is an important part of acting honestly. Trustworthy people and organizations are less likely to commit or allow wrongdoings. When people trust each other a lot, they are less likely to be crooked. Promoting civil virtues. Ethical values support civic virtues when tells people to do what best for society instead of putting themselves first and hurting others. Civic virtue is a strong way to stop people from being wicked. Rule of law support. Doing the right thing supports the rule of law and follows the rules set by laws and rules. Avoiding or breaking the law is a common part of corrupt behavior, and following ethical standards make people more likely to obey law. Protections of whistleblowers. Government and ethical organizations put protecting people who report crime at the top of their list of priorities. Ethical values urges people to report unethical behavior, a key of finding and fixing corruption. Moral behavior is very important to a country's image on the world stage. Foreign investors and partners are more likely to want to work with and invest in a countries known for having good government and low level of corruption. Long term sustainability. Doing things that aren't honest can help in the short term but hurt in the long run. Being ethical is important for societies to grow and succeed in the long term. What suggestions does the second ARC have to fight corruptions? India's second Administrative Reform Commission, an advice body, came up with a list of detailed suggestions for fighting corruptions and making government more honest and effective. The suggestions aim to stop cheating and make government work more open and accountable. One of the most important things in the second ARC can be boosting efforts to fight corruptions. Whistleblowers Protection Act 2019 is very important step in this area. The second ARC suggested changes to be Whistleblowers Protection Act to make it safer and more appealing for the people to report wrongdoing. This means keeping them safe from harassment and giving them money. Increasing the Central Vigilance Commission CVC's independence, resources, and powers would help the second ARC do its job of fighting and stopping corruption better. The Central Bureau of Investigation CBI. The committee suggests steps to protect CBI's independence and ability to do its job of investigating corruption cases well. Standard operating procedure SOPs. The second ARC suggested that all government services and processes should have clear SOPs so that the official don't have as much freedom to make decisions. This makes it little likely to be people to be crooked and make decisions without reason. Then there is a use of technology. Using technology and e-governance can cut down on the need of people to interact with and make decisions but government businesses. The commission's pushed for the use of electronic means to cut down an opportunity for corruptions. Police reform or police accountability. The committee stressed that the need for broad policy reforms to make law enforcement agencies more honest and effective. One part of this is taking steps to make the police force more open, accountable, and professional. Community policing. Supporting community policing can help people trust the police, which makes it harder to them to be crooked or abuse their power. Ethical code of ethics. To encourage ethical behavior among public officials and workers, the commission suggests creating an ethical codes that is called the code of ethics. Citizens charter. Encouraging government departments to use citizen charter can make them more accountable and improve the way of government serves the people. Public awareness campaign. Media and education is very important part in the awareness programs. The committee suggests using the media in schools to teach people about how bad corruption is and how important it is to act in an honest way. Then there is a parliamentary oversight. Parliamentary committees is also very important in the area of these corruption issues. Improving the ability of the parliamentary committees to closely examine how the government works and how much money is spent and can help find and stop crime. The e-governance and digitalization. The digitalization transformation is very important. In the second ARC suggested all government processes should be done digitally to cut down human error and wrongdoing. There are something which we should look forward for that. Strengthening rewards and penalties system is to be taken care of. Rewarding integrity and punishing illegal behavior is perhaps the simplest strategy for fighting corruption. Research restructuring bureaucracies is required. The moment has come to change how bureaucracies operates. About the bureaucracy structure, there are seven set of anti-corruption policies. Bureaucratic discretion is one, decentralization is another, bureaucratic competition is another one, staff rotation, whistleblowing, streamlining regulations, and electoral incentives. Educational campaign is very important in this area. Informational anti-corruption interventions have a long history and gained popularity when Hong Kong Independent Commission Against Corruption ACAC used educational campaigns with remarkable effectiveness in the 1970s. Enumerate ethical and public spirit civil servants. When listening the characteristics of an ethical and public spirit civil servants, an ideal official should ensure that there are no open cases within the jurisdiction, exhibits the greatest level of probity and integrity while in office, be proactive in communicating government policies to the public, and most importantly, have compassion for the suffering of marginalized groups. Reflecting on the importance of the good institution for good governance, there is a need for re engineering our institutions and streamlining the process to cut down days and ensure timely delivery services. So, in that system, where we find that when the bureaucrats start using discretions, then this is having no limit. Discretions create corruptions, and this corruption ultimately affects the policies that is being carried out for the purpose of development. This discretion, either by the hand of the politicians or the bureaucrats, both are something which directly related to the corruptions. When the politicians are having a very close relations, personal relations with the bureaucrats, they use bureaucrats for the discretion authority, and these bureaucrats are well confident that whatever wrong they will do, their political affiliations will be stand before him in any type of a problem. So protections is something which has been given to them in the form of a political bosses, in the form of a discretionary authority. So this bureaucratic discretions has to be carefully monetized. It has to be carefully taken care of. Decentralization is another area which can curtail the corruptions. Decentralization here means that every offices in government organizations must have the clear cut duties and must shoulder the responsibility and accountability. So when the power is being distributed among different offices, then in that circumstances there is a clarity in the system of administration. A hierarchical structure can identify the power that is being shared to the different officers. The hierarchical structure can clear the duties and responsibilities distributed in different offices, and the hierarchy clearly shows the accountability and commitment of these officers. So decentralization is very essential for the purpose of maintaining a standard of integrity in the administrations. So every lower officers will have a threat of their boss, and every superior officers will be completely under the scrutiny or under the vision of the subordinate officers. So these hierarchical structures, that where there is a communications between the bosses and the lower officers, there is informations which is provided from the lower officers to the higher officers, become a part of a check in the system of corruptions. Then there is a system of staff rotations. This staff rotation, nowadays we find that there is a big business going on in the political circles relating to the transfer of a staff from one office to the other. It has actually become a business where every political parties, though they don't have the system of spoil or patronage system now, there is a system of merit where the staffs are being selected on the basis of competitive examinations, but their future, their positions are being clearly controlled by the politicians. So the rapid change of the offices of these officers, they are not been given the sufficient time to excel their abilities in the development of the places on offices where he is been placed, is something which is also can be known a part of the corruptions. So here, when a clear rules and regulations has to be formulated, and strictly it has to be implemented, that how the officers in different department will be deputed, and what will be the terms and conditions for the purpose of their shifting from one place to the other. We simply find that if there is any irregularities are found in the office, the blame goes to the bureaucrats, and the bureaucrats punishment that limits to transfer from one office to the other. So this transfer from one office to the other on the basis of having only a punishment is not sufficient. On the other hand, what happens that the politicians having a connections with these bureaucrats, so whenever they assume the office, and then they try to associate those bureaucrats whom they have having a good understanding in the form of different malpractices will be there in the part of their office. That is also create a situation where the corruption starts. The whistleblower is something very important. There it must be a very established norms, procedures, and methods and other monetary benefits for the whistleblowers. Whistleblowers can play a very crucial role. Nowadays, we find that there are a number of the RTI activists who are playing a very important role in curtailing the corruptions. These activists of RTIs, they're always having a threat from the people to whom they are working for. and the government is not taking proper initiatives. Number of the RTI prisoners has been killed in these issues. So there is a need of having a confidence in the whistleblowers, and the whistleblowers may know that if there is anything happening to them, then the monetary help will be provided by the government, and all sort of protections will be available for them for providing some corruptions or other informations which is of a malpractice nature to the government. Then there is electoral incentives are also very important. That is, electoral incentives means that the practices of electoral system should be very clear, transparent. There must not be any type of malpractices or use of bureaucrats for the purpose of influencing the voters. All these has to be taken into consideration. So in that circumstances, when these bureaucrats become neutral, they are the people who are committed to the nations. They are the people who has to look after the welfare of the people, and they are the people who strictly follow the rules and regulations only. Then there will not be any electoral malpractices. And if there is no electoral malpractices, the proper democracy will be established. And when proper democracy will be established, then whatever rules will come from that government will be definitely for the purpose of development of the nation and curtailment of the corruptions. So all these points has to be taken into consideration when we talk about the legal frameworks that is to be developed by the political executive for the purpose of the corruption control. Thank you.